So for an organization who's looking to address this, they've got good reasons why they should do it. One of those reasons is going to be, which is going to be potentially a powerful business case driver, is that there's a decent size of a problem. How have you seen organizations work effectively to actually quantify this grey spend or to kind of quantify the problem?
Um, so from the most of my perspectives kind of been from the inside, client owner. From the outside, I think staffing suppliers are trying to morph into more services or SOW type suppliers, and you can get help to help quantify some of that. It requires sharing some data and some insights. Which if you have a good contingent labor supplier you partner with, you can do that. I've seen that done before. I think the opportunity is not after the spend, but before the spend with requisition amounts. I keep going back to that because, once something is inked and already started, nobody wants to unwind it. So, trapping the opportunity to quantify and have the discussion is right at the requisition before it goes to your no, those are typically call-offs to big suppliers, again, thinking in the IT or services space, your Accenture, or your IBM, or your Tata. And, if those are $100,000 recs that are just going through and saying spend, 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 some of it you can do what I mentioned earlier is to say, hey, this looks like we're duplicating what we've already outsourced. Should we be doing that? And getting to the dollar amount is pretty easy because if you flagged it as suspect, you just various probability levels, right? Was it, a P10, P50, P100 that it's not services spend, you can quantify very quickly that, I've got 100 racks going through a month at $100,000 at probability 80%, you can pretty quickly start putting some 80% and where we're spending, if we think we're buying services by 20% because the rate's being higher or whatever, versus what we could do on the open contingent labor market. So that was the real easy business case to one, flag it, then work internally with my services procurement counterparts with contingent labor and route it appropriately. And then also inspect after the fact to see if, it got better or it didn't get better. And we tracked all of that through our spend analysis and ultimately our supplier performance back end analysis.
Yeah, I love the supplier performance bit. I think ultimately that should be the kind of fulcrum for a lot of this type of analysis and this type of work. But so many companies just don't put the emphasis into it. Um, it was interesting the point you made about staffing firms in some ways starting to act more under kind of, project services delivery, statement of work type delivery. Would you agree that there's maybe a little bit of a kind of a confluence in the market where consulting firms in some cases are starting to act more like staffing firms, and staffing firms in some cases are starting to act more like consultancies? Would you say there's a bit of a confluence going on there?
Yes, yeah, that's happened for years. Even since my consulting days, I think it was maybe less known back then. Um, Big Four consulting anyway. No, there's always a blended model to some extent in delivering services, internal, external, or subcontracted. But I do think, if you're buying the right skills and you are signing up to deliver results, again, staffing companies are typically a little bit more transactionally minded in finding the right skills for X duration at X rate or Y rate. But I think what clients are looking for is more solutions today than they are. just headcount or to backfill staff aug roles. So it makes sense, and I think some suppliers of staffing suppliers have done it well, and some are just kind of, um, whitewashing it a little bit. I not going to name names, and I just and from a consulting perspective, it's getting harder to justify the big rates from the big four, and I certainly appreciate a lot of the accelerators they can bring and the knowledge bases, etc. But ultimately, today it's about kind of getting results.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree. So in terms of when organizations are trying to navigate this messy area in the middle, you talked about directing the work to the right channel, and the analysis that you were doing up front. I mean, there are triage tools in the market as well. I feel like sometimes they're coming at it very much from a misclassification point of view, but I guess
Right.
that's kind of is partly the point, but is that the point, or is it more about the work that needs to be done and how best it should be delivered, in your opinion?
Yeah, certainly you want to be compliant, and but ultimately the harder part, the classification is helpful and appropriate, but at the end of the day, it's how are we going to get the work done, and am I backfilling this role for X period of time? Is it a role I'm going to have? These are things you can partner internally, which I did. I know others have with, their talent acquisition teams of, hey, this role's been 2.4 years, and this person's been in role, and assuming you don't have tenure limits on your contract labor, it's time to either think about moving this into a permanent role and converting the person or putting it out to market as an open job, or you know, uh, potentially wrapping it into a service, or taking a look at the best way we can do this going forward. A lot of companies have, especially on the corporate services side, have chosen to offshore a lot in, global business centers globally. So when you're talking kind of the non-direct side of the business, that's a lot of the decision making that's been going on when you can offshore and do some labor arbitrage there. But back to the question you're asking on the just outcomes. I think, if we were to really look at the solving the problem that we're trying to do as opposed to throwing labor at it, and or just, quick written requisitions to get something done that we don't really know what we're trying to complete. And it's hard. I've been there. I've been on the business side trying to write those SOWs. And again, I challenge you to use your procurement team as a thought partner. As a business owner, use your procurement team as a thought partner. Your eyes might be open to the potential opportunities out there to partner with suppliers and or come together with kind of a set of suppliers to solve a particular business problem, as well as, look to your suppliers to help you solve those. I think there's a lot of big four level solutions that are coming from companies like the one I'm working for right now, which would be considered more of a staffing company as opposed to a solutions company, but it's morphing itself into that raises. So,
Interesting.